Hey there, and welcome to Tales by June, where hearts break, heal, and sometimes seek revenge. Let's begin today's story.
Hey, before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
My name is Amanda, and if you asked my parents who their pride and joy was, they would answer without hesitation, my younger sister, Emily. I came first into this world, yet it always felt like I came second in their hearts. From the very beginning, I was the quiet one. I loved books, long walks, and helping mom in the kitchen. I was the type of child who worked hard at everything: school, chores, even making little handmade gifts for my parents just to see them smile. But when Emily was born, everything shifted. Emily had the kind of presence that demanded attention. She was loud, playful, and beautiful even as a baby. Her laugh could light up the whole room. Everyone adored her. Relatives visited just to hold her, while I often sat in the corner, clutching my dolls, hoping someone would notice me. I remember one birthday clearly. I was turning 10. I had begged for a simple chocolate cake, the kind mom used to make. That morning, I woke up excited, but when I entered the kitchen, the cake wasn't there. Instead, balloons covered the living room, and there was a giant pink cake, Emily's favorite color. My parents smiled and said, "We thought we'd celebrate both your birthdays together, honey. Emily's been wanting a party." Emily was only 6. She was dressed in a sparkly dress, her hair curled. Everyone who came sang to her, handed her presents, and only 1 or 2 said, "Happy birthday" to me. I sat there with a forced smile, clapping for my sister, pretending I wasn't hurt. That night, when the guests left, Emily tore open her gifts, squealing with joy. I quietly took the one small package that had my name on it, a pair of socks from an aunt. I never said a word. That was the story of my life. As Emily grew, so did her charm. She was the star cheerleader, the homecoming queen, the girl everyone wanted to be around. My parents lived for her achievements. They hung her trophies in the living room. They drove hours to cheer at her competitions. When I graduated top of my class, my father barely glanced at my certificate. "That's nice, Amanda," he said. But when Emily won a beauty pageant, they threw her a party. I learned early to bury my hurt deep inside. I focused on working hard, building my own path. I took jobs as soon as I could, saving money, paying bills when my parents were struggling. I covered groceries, electricity, sometimes even the mortgage. Yet whenever Emily wanted something: new clothes, a vacation, money for her hobbies, it was me who paid, and my parents who praised her for being so bright, so promising. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd ever be enough. But then I told myself, maybe love isn't always equal. Maybe this was my role, to be the strong one, the dependable one, the forgotten daughter who made sure the family didn't fall apart. Still, deep down, a small ember of resentment grew. It flickered quietly at first, then stronger every time I was overlooked. One evening, I overheard my parents talking. Dad said, "We should start saving for Emily's wedding someday. She deserves something beautiful." And Mom replied, "Yes, she's the one who will bring pride to this family." They didn't notice I was standing in the hallway, holding a stack of bills I had just paid for them. My hands shook. My throat tightened. All I wanted was to scream, "What about me? Do you even see me?" But instead, I walked upstairs, shut my door, and swallowed the pain. Emily knew, of course. She always knew she was the favorite. Sometimes, she would tease me, call me Mom and Dad's little helper, as if my sacrifices were nothing but chores. She would flash her perfect smile, and they would laugh along with her. And I, the quiet one, the good daughter, would sit in silence. Looking back, I realized I was building a life in the shadows. But shadows have power too. And one day, those shadows would rise, demanding to be seen. Because you can only ignore someone's worth for so long before they finally decide to show you. And when I finally did, it would change everything. Adulthood came at me fast. While Emily floated through her college years with her parents cheering at every turn, I worked. I worked through my own classes, through sleepless nights, through bills that somehow always landed on my lap. When Dad lost his job for a year, it was me who stepped in. I picked up 2 part-time positions while finishing my degree. I waited tables in the evenings and worked at a call center during the day. I remember sitting on the bus at midnight, my hands blistered from trays, my throat raw from talking, and my mind foggy from exhaustion. But when I'd come home, Mom would greet me not with gratitude, but with complaints. "Amanda, the electric bill came again. Can you take care of it? Emily needs her allowance for books, you know." Books. Emily's books, her clothes, her trips with friends. Everything Emily wanted, she got. And if money was short, it was understood. I'd cover it. Emily used to call me the bank. Sometimes she'd say it with a laugh, sometimes with a pout. "Come on, Mandy, just this once. I'll pay you back." But she never did. She never intended to. And when she bought herself a new dress or went to a concert, she'd parade it around me, as if daring me to complain. I never did. Why? Because I told myself I was doing it for my parents. They needed me. They relied on me. And maybe, just maybe, if I kept giving, they would finally see me. But they never did. One Christmas stands out in my memory. I had spent weeks saving up to buy gifts for everyone, perfume for Mom, a new watch for Dad, and a designer handbag for Emily because she had been eyeing it. When we gathered around the tree, they opened their presents with wide smiles. Mom hugged Emily tightly and said, "Look at this bag. Our Emily deserves only the best." Dad laughed and said, "She's always been our shining star." And me? I sat there with nothing. Not even a card. They didn't even notice. I remember slipping away to the bathroom, locking the door, and staring at myself in the mirror. My eyes were glassy, my lips trembling. I whispered to my reflection, "Why am I never enough?" That night, lying awake in my childhood bedroom, I realized something painful. My sacrifices were invisible. They weren't gifts in my family's eyes. They were obligations. Expected. Like I owed them my life for simply existing. Still, I didn't stop. I pushed forward. I built a career, saved more, bought them groceries, paid for repairs, even helped cover Emily's car when she wanted a shiny new one. Yet when Emily got engaged, it was as if the world revolved around her once again. My parents lit up with joy, their voices filled with pride. Emily's getting married. She'll have the wedding of her dreams. And I fool that I was opened my wallet again. I covered the down payment for the venue. I paid for the catering. I booked the flowers, the music, the decorations. I told myself this was my chance to finally be recognized, to finally hear them say, "Amanda, thank you. We couldn't have done this without you." But deep inside, a storm was brewing. Because each time Emily bragged about her fairy tale wedding, each time my parents nodded with admiration, I felt that ember of resentment grow hotter. And I didn't know it then, but the wedding day would be the day everything changed. The day I stopped being invisible. The day they would all finally see me. The morning of Emily's wedding felt heavy, as though the air itself carried a weight only I could feel. The sun was shining, the skies were clear, and every detail of the day sparkled like something out of a magazine. It should have been a beautiful day. But for me, it felt like walking into a storm I had been bracing for all my life. The venue was breathtaking. Rows of white chairs lined the manicured lawn. Flowers I had paid for draped every archway, their fragrance filling the air. A string quartet rehearsed softly in the background, their notes delicate and elegant. Guests arrived in clusters, dressed in glamorous suits and flowing gowns. Laughter echoed. Compliments floated through the air. And in the middle of it all was Emily. She looked like a princess. Her gown was fitted with shimmering crystals, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She stood surrounded by her friends, her bridesmaids, all giggling and snapping photos, tossing their glossy curls as though the world revolved around them. I arrived quietly, as I always did. My dress was simple, chosen carefully to look respectful but not attention-grabbing. I carried a small clutch, though what I carried most heavily was the knowledge that every single detail around us, from the flowers to the music to the decorations, had been paid for by me. I took a deep breath and walked toward my parents. They were chatting with distant relatives, smiling proudly. For a moment, I hoped, just hoped, they would turn to me and say, "Amanda, you did all this. Thank you." Instead, Mom's eyes flicked to me briefly and she said, "Oh, Amanda, you made it. Go help Emily with her veil, will you?" Just like that. No recognition. No warmth. Just another task. I swallowed hard and nodded. The first insult came quickly. As I stepped toward Emily and her group, one of her bridesmaids looked me up and down. "Oh, that's a practical dress," she said, her lips curling. The others giggled, including Emily. She leaned in and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Mandy never was much for style. But at least she tries." Heat crawled up my neck. I smiled weakly, pretending it didn't sting. The second came later, during the family photos. The photographer asked for the bride and her sister. I stood beside Emily, fixing her gown gently, when she suddenly pulled her arm back. "Careful, Amanda. Don't wrinkle it. This dress is worth more than anything you've ever worn in your life." Her friends laughed again. The photographer hesitated, awkwardly clicking the shutter while I forced myself to stay still, my chest tightening. The third cut came like a blade dipped in sugar. During the reception introductions, Emily stood with her fiancé, glowing, thanking everyone for being there. She raised her glass and said, "I couldn't have done this without my amazing parents, who gave me the world. And my friends, who stood by me. I'm so blessed." No mention of me. Not even a nod. I sat there, surrounded by tables of smiling faces, my glass untouched. My parents clapped loudly, their eyes glistening with pride. And for a moment, I felt invisible again, just a shadow in the corner of a day I had built with my own hands. But the worst was yet to come. The evening deepened. The reception hall glowed with golden lights, laughter filled the room, and the dance floor pulsed with music. Emily was radiant, spinning in her gown, laughing with her friends, the very center of the universe. I tried to stay quiet, sitting at the edge of the room, sipping water, holding myself together. But my silence painted a target on me. During one of the toasts, Emily's maid of honor raised her glass and said, "To the most stunning bride we've ever seen. Emily, you've always been the queen of this family." The crowd laughed and clapped. And then Emily, drunk with attention and maybe a little wine, smirked at me. "Oh, don't look so serious, Amanda. Not everyone can be the star. Some of us were just born to be background characters." I felt something break inside me. Years of silence, years of swallowing pain, years of sacrificing everything only to be shamed, humiliated, dismissed in front of everyone. My chair screeched against the floor as I stood. My heart thundered in my chest. The room quieted. Dozens of eyes turned to me. My parents froze, unsure. Emily raised her brows, a cruel smile tugging at her lips. And for the first time in my life, I didn't stay quiet. "You're right, Emily," I said, my voice trembling but loud. "I have been the background. I paid for your flowers, your music, your food, this entire fairy tale day. I gave everything I had, money, time, sacrifices you never even noticed. And still, I'm nothing to you but a joke." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Emily's smile faltered. My parents shifted uncomfortably, their faces pale. I lifted my chin, tears burning but unshed. If being invisible is all I'll ever be in this family, then so be it. But tonight, you'll see what happens when the background character walks away. I turned on my heel, the hall silent except for the clicking of my shoes against the floor. I didn't look back. By the time I stepped outside, the night air cool against my face, I had already pulled out my phone. My fingers shook as I dialed each vendor, the caterers, the decorators, the music coordinator. "Cancel everything after tonight," I said. "Charge the balance to Emily Thompson, not Amanda." Their protests blurred together, but I held firm. Inside, panic erupted. The wedding machine began to crumble. The perfect image Emily had built was unraveling. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Because I had finally stopped being invisible. I barely slept that night. My phone buzzed endlessly with calls, messages, voicemails. Some from relatives, others from vendors confused about the cancellations, but most from my parents. I didn't answer any of them. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over in my mind. The gasps, the silence, Emily's stunned face, my mother's look of horror, my father's clenched jaw. I wondered if I'd gone too far, if my anger had burned down more than I intended. But then I remembered Emily's words. Some of us were just born to be background characters. And I knew I hadn't gone far enough. By morning, the family group chat was a battlefield. Cousins whispered, uncles and aunts asked what had really happened, and screenshots of posts from guests started circulating. Someone had uploaded a short clip of my outburst. It spread fast. People praised my courage, some laughed at the awkward silence, and others speculated about years of tension finally exploding. For once, people were talking about me, not Emily. Around noon, there was a knock at my apartment door. Hard, impatient. I knew before opening who it was. I cracked the door to see my parents standing there, faces drawn and pale. My mother's mascara was smudged, my father's tie loosened. They looked like people who had aged 10 years overnight. "Amanda, we need to talk," my father said, his voice tight. I stepped aside. They walked in, the silence heavy between us. "Do you realize what you've done?" my mother burst out finally. "You humiliated your sister in front of everyone. You ruined her wedding." A bitter laugh escaped me. Her wedding? Or the wedding I paid for? The one I built from the ground up while you two sat back and praised her like she hung the moon. Dad's face reddened. "That's not fair, Amanda. She's your sister. Family comes first." I snapped my gaze to him. Family comes first? Then where was family when I worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on? Where was family when I gave every cent to make sure Emily never went without? Where were you when I begged for recognition, for love, for anything other than silence? My mother flinched. Her eyes darted away, glassy with tears. But Dad stood stiff, his jaw locked. "You didn't have to do all that," he muttered. "We never asked." That hurt more than I expected. My chest tightened as I whispered, "You didn't have to ask. I did it because I loved you. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, it would make me matter." Silence filled the room. The ticking of the clock on my wall was the only sound. Then Dad cleared his throat. "Your sister is devastated. People are talking. Do you understand the damage you've caused? You need to apologize." Apologize. The word twisted in my gut like a knife. I shook my head slowly. "No, not this time. She humiliated me for years. She mocked me in front of the entire family, and you let her. I won't apologize for finally standing up for myself." My parents stared at me as though I were a stranger. Maybe, in their eyes, I had become one. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice breaking. "If you love this family, Amanda, fix this." I met her gaze with a steadiness I didn't know I had. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have let it get this far." The words landed heavy. She blinked, stunned, as though realizing something for the first time. Dad, however, turned away, muttering under his breath. They left without another word. When the door shut behind them, I sank onto my couch, trembling. My whole body felt like it had been set on fire the night before, and now I was standing in the ashes. But for the first time, the ashes were mine. And maybe, just maybe, I could build something new from them. When my parents left my apartment that afternoon, I sat in silence. My body shook with rage. My chest was so tight it felt like it would burst. Their words replayed again and again in my head. "We never asked." That one sentence broke something inside me. Didn't ask? Didn't ask when they handed me the electric bill as a teenager? Didn't ask when they let me cover the mortgage to save the house? Didn't ask when Emily wanted a new car and I wrote the check? Didn't ask, because they never needed to. They knew I'd do it. They knew I was too desperate for their approval, too hungry for scraps of love, to ever say no. I stood, pacing my apartment, my fists clenched. Years of being overlooked, mocked, and dismissed boiled over. I was tired of crying, tired of begging, tired of being invisible. That night, I sat at my desk and opened a blank notebook. I began writing down every dollar I had spent on them over the years. Every bill, every emergency, every favor for Emily. The numbers climbed higher and higher, a painful reminder of how much of my life had been poured into a bottomless pit of ungratefulness. I looked at the final total, and my hands trembled. It was enough to buy my own home. Enough to build my own dreams. I whispered to myself, no more. I called a lawyer the next morning. A calm, steady voice answered, and for the first time, I didn't hesitate. I need to send a notice, I said. To my parents and my sister. I want every penny I've ever given them back. Every cent. The lawyer didn't even pause. We'll draft it. You'll have to be detailed with receipts, transfers, records. I have everything, I interrupted. Years of bank statements. I've kept it all. When I hung up, a strange peace washed over me. For once, I wasn't just swallowing my pain. I was turning it into something. But I wasn't finished. That night, I opened my laptop and began typing. My hands moved fast, as though the words had been waiting for years. I wrote about my childhood, about the birthdays where Emily stole the spotlight, about Christmases where I was forgotten. I wrote about the bills, the sacrifices, the countless humiliations. I wrote about the wedding, the insults, the final breaking point. The post exploded. By morning, my phone was flooded with notifications. Friends, coworkers, even distant relatives shared it. Comments poured in. Amanda, you deserved better. Your family should be ashamed. I can't believe Emily treated you like that. Some were shocked, others furious on my behalf. People who had been at the wedding chimed in, confirming what they saw, the mocking, the insults, the silence from my parents, and at the end of the post, my words hung like a hammer blow. I will no longer be invisible. I am breaking ties with my parents and my sister. I deserve better than to be the family's forgotten daughter. I am demanding repayment for everything I have given them. This is the last time they will ever use me. The fallout was immediate. My parents called over and over, their voices frantic in voicemail after voicemail. My father barked angrily in some, "How dare you shame us publicly like this?" My mother sobbed in others, "Please take it down, Amanda, people are talking. We'll discuss this as a family." Emily wasn't quiet either. She messaged me paragraphs filled with insults. "You're jealous. You've always been jealous. No wonder you're alone. You're bitter and pathetic." But underneath her anger, I could hear something else. Panic. Because the fairy tale image she had crafted was crumbling. The whispers were spreading through her friends, through her fiancé's family, through the community. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded the lawyer's official notices to their emails and physical addresses. Cold, formal words stating what they owed me and what would happen if they didn't pay. For once, the power was in my hands. I sat back, watching as the storm I had unleashed raged. My parents, once so smug and proud of their golden child, were now drowning in embarrassment. Emily, once untouchable, was scrambling to keep her reputation intact, and me, for the first time in my life, I wasn't the background. I was the one holding the spotlight. And I wasn't afraid anymore. The days following my post were chaos. Emily's perfect wedding quickly became the talk of the town, not for its beauty, but for its downfall. Guests whispered about the scene, about my speech, about how the bride mocked her own sister before being publicly exposed. Screenshots of my posts spread everywhere. Some people even made short reaction videos, dissecting every detail. And Emily hated it. Her social media, once a highlight reel of her perfect life, filled with glossy photos and staged smiles, was suddenly flooded with angry comments. "How could you treat your sister like that? Ungrateful brat. Pay her back." She tried to fight back. She posted a long statement calling me bitter, jealous, a liar. But it backfired. Within hours, people dug up old stories, high school classmates who remembered her mocking me, coworkers who saw her brag about her sister the bank. The cracks widened. Her fiancé's family wasn't blind either. I heard through relatives that they had questions about finances, about Emily's character. One of them even commented under my post, "We had no idea. Thank you for sharing your truth." Emily's perfect image was collapsing. And I wasn't sorry. Meanwhile, my parents were drowning in shame. Their friends avoided them. Church members whispered behind their backs. My father's pride, once towering and unshakable, now looked like a crumbling wall. One evening, I came home to find them waiting outside my apartment again. Their faces were pale, drawn tight with desperation. "Amanda, please," my mother said as soon as I opened the door. "Take the post down. You've said your piece. Enough is enough." I crossed my arms. "Enough? You think this is about one post? This is my entire life. Years of being ignored, used, humiliated. This is the bill coming due." Dad stepped forward, his voice hard. "You've embarrassed us enough. Take it down before you destroy your sister's marriage." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Her marriage? That's what you care about? Not the daughter who kept this family afloat? Not the one who gave everything she had just to be noticed?" Neither of them spoke. Their silence said everything. Something cold settled in me. "You know what, Dad? Maybe I am destroying her marriage. Maybe I'm destroying the little kingdom you built around her. But I didn't build it. I just paid for it. And I'm done paying." Their eyes flickered with shock, but I didn't let them speak. I shut the door. For once, I had the final word. It all came to a head 2 weeks later. Emily called me, her voice frantic, on the verge of breaking. "Mandy, please. You've ruined everything. Mark's family is threatening to pull the wedding money. People at his job are talking. Do you want me to lose everything?" I stayed quiet for a moment, letting her words hang. Then I said softly, "Now you know how it feels to lose everything. That was my life for years, Emily." She exploded. "You're pathetic. You'll die alone with your bitterness. You'll regret this." And that's when I said the words that ended it all. "No, Emily. The only thing I regret is not standing up sooner. You, Mom, and Dad, you took and never gave back. But those days are over. You can either repay me or face the consequences." There was silence on the line. Then a choked sob. And for the first time, I heard fear in my sister's voice. Days later, I received an official letter from my lawyer. Emily and my parents were contesting the repayment. They wanted to fight. So I agreed to meet them. The confrontation happened in the lawyer's office. A sterile, neutral place, yet the tension made it feel like a battlefield. Emily sat across from me, her face pale, makeup thick to hide the stress. My parents flanked her, both looking worn, as though the weight of years had finally crashed down. The lawyer laid out the records, my transfers, my payments, my receipts. Every dollar I had poured into them. The evidence was undeniable. Emily tried to speak. She wanted to help. She never said no. I cut her off. I didn't say no because I thought family meant something. But I see now, family only meant me giving and you taking. My father's voice cracked for the first time in my life. "Amanda, we didn't know. We didn't realize." I looked him dead in the eye. "You knew. You just didn't care." The room went silent. For once, I wasn't the invisible daughter. I was the one holding the truth, the one with the power. And they knew it. As we left that day, Emily's tears smeared her perfect mask. My parents walked out stiff and broken. And I walked out taller than I ever had before. Because I had finally taken back my life. The weeks after the confrontation were like watching dominoes fall. Emily's engagement didn't survive. Mark's family, once enchanted by her charm, grew wary. My post, the gossip, the evidence, it was too much to ignore. They questioned her honesty, her character, her treatment of me. The final blow came when Mark himself visited me, awkward and quiet. He stood in my doorway, hands shoved in his pockets. "Amanda, I didn't know. I thought you and Emily were close. She never told me anything about what you did for her or your parents." I nodded, my arms folded. "She didn't tell you because the truth didn't fit her story." His eyes dropped to the floor. "I can't marry someone who hides things like this, who treats her own sister that way." When he left, I felt no triumph, only a strange emptiness. Emily's kingdom had crumbled, but instead of satisfaction, I felt free. Free of the chains that had bound me for so long. Meanwhile, my parents struggled under the weight of public shame. Their friends avoided them. Neighbors whispered. For the first time, they couldn't hide behind Emily's glow. They were forced to face the reality they had created. They called me again, but their tone was different now. Softer. Weaker. My father even said, "Maybe we should have done things differently, Amanda. Maybe we should have seen you." It was too late. I told them calmly, I don't want apologies. I don't want excuses. I just want distance. And with that, I cut the cord. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried, grieving the family I never really had. But each morning I woke stronger. I realized I had carried them for so long that I didn't know what life looked like without their weight. Now I was finding out. And it was lighter. Time has a way of softening wounds. Not erasing them, but turning sharp edges into scars that remind you of your strength. Months passed. I focused on myself for the first time in my life. I traveled. I took classes I had always wanted. I decorated my apartment not for anyone else, but for me. And slowly, joy crept back in. One evening, at a friend's dinner party, I met someone. His name was Daniel. He was kind, steady, and he listened when I spoke, really listened, as though my words mattered. For the first time, I felt seen. Not as a provider, not as a background character, but as Amanda. Just Amanda. We started small. Coffee dates. Walks in the park. Conversations that stretched until sunrise. And somewhere along the way, I realized something. I wasn't invisible anymore. Not to him. Not to myself. The world still whispered about my family's downfall, but I no longer cared. Their story wasn't mine to carry anymore. My story was one of survival, of courage, of finally stepping into the light. On a quiet evening, Daniel and I stood on my balcony, the city lights glowing below us. He took my hand and said softly, "You've been through so much. But you're the strongest woman I know." Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't the tears of pain I had known for years. They were tears of healing. I looked at him, then out at the skyline, and whispered to myself, I'm not invisible. Not anymore. For the first time in my life, I believed it. And that belief was the beginning of everything.